Tov, good morning. Today is Friday, June 11th, Erev Shabbat, Parshat Korach. These are fractious times, are they not? People are always in conflict, it seems. Society itself does not seem to hold together. It is something that we've always known to be a challenge in Israel and in this country, and somehow it just seems so much worse. In Israel, they're at the brink, hopefully, of establishing a government. Any government right now, Israel just needs a functioning government to run a country, right? In this case, we know the elements of this government that's being put together. Interesting combination of many different parties and factions choosing to try to come together as they do. It's been a tough week with very, very harsh language and dangerous language from certain parties about these individuals and stopping them at all costs. Some said even teetering on dangerous jargon for sure. But God willing, something will happen on Sunday. A government will be formed, and we hope that it will function just to help move Israel forward as a government to serve its people. In this country, it seems that we just when we think we've hit a low, we hit a new low in terms of our inability to, as a country, to function anymore, with parties not really engaging with one another. And that, I believe, is the warning sign that this is expressed in this week's parashah. In dealing with the rebellion of Korach va'adato, we generally focus our attention on Korach. We should. He's sort of the leader of this band of people who are rebelling for very different reasons, each of them. But we should not forget that on that short list of people that are mentioned at the beginning of the parasha, it's Korach and Datan and Aviram. On Ben Pelet, there's another story, right? Datan and Aviram. And they seem to have their very specific concerns. They're not interested in what Korach wants, they're interested in what these 250 people who are bringing the Ketoret, the incense, want. And Moshe deals with Korach, and Moshe deals with them, with the 250, and then Moshe calls Datan and Aviram to speak to them. Vayishlach Moshe l'kol Datan and Aviram, this is Pasuk Yud Beit, Vayamru, and they said in response to Moshe's call to them, come, let's talk. Lo na'aleh, we're not going up. No meeting with you, Moshe. And it continues, they sort of have their list of all the failures of Moshe as a leader, and you are looking to lord yourself over us. Kitis tarer leinu, gamtis his tarer, look at you lording yourself over us. You should understand, by the way, the Midrashic read, also taken up by the movie with Edward G. Robinson, has Moshe's first interaction with Israelites, where one day he goes out and he sees an Egyptian striking a Jew, and he kills the Egyptian. The next day he sees two Jews who are fighting with one another, and he tries to stop them, and they look at him and they say, like, who made you boss over us? And the connection the Midrash says is the same energy of challenging Moshe as being somehow looking to lord himself instead of trying to deal with the problems that are in front of him. And the Midrash says, same people. Datan Aviram here in our parsha, that's the same people, and that they're the ones who are fighting with each other earlier in that story. So they say no, and then they say, you continue with his failures, you haven't brought us to land flowing with milk and honey. And then they say you can poke out, or you can poke out the eyes of everybody else. You can blind them to what your real intentions are and to what your accomplishments are, Moshe, but we know really who you are. Lo na'aleh. They repeat again, we're not coming up. And then the Torah continues. Vayichar leMoshe ma'od. And Moshe was greatly angered. And God, he turns to God and says, don't accept their offerings. I've never taken a single donkey from them, and I've not caused any harm to any one of them. So what's going on here with this statement of Moshe? So on the one hand, there's an implicit accusation that Moshe is corrupt, Moshe is a failure, Moshe doesn't put the people first, and he really takes great umbrage at that. That's how we usually read this pasuk. Comes along the Midrash Tanchuma, And the Midrash chooses to translate the words. Vayichal Moshe me'od, nitzta'er lachada. Instead of saying vayichar, which means anger, it says he was greatly, greatly anguished. Why was he anguished? Okay, again, anguished because of the accusations. He takes them personally. But look how it continues. Lema davar domeh. What can you compare this to? La'adam hadani mechaveiro. Like someone who is involved in some type of ongoing dispute with somebody else. Dan, they have a judgment that's going on. But you're going back, you have an issue with somebody else. Umitvakeach imo. You have a dispute. And you have, you say your position, I say my position. So im mishivo, if I put out to you, what I'm upset about, or my position on the matter, and you respond to me, yesh sham nachat ruach. There is in that nachat ruach. What an interesting term, nachat ruach, which means that you're really at ease. So what does it mean? You feel good? You feel good about debating with somebody? So you understand from the continuation what they mean by this. You mean eino meshivo, but if a person doesn't respond to you, yesh bo tsar gadol, then you have great anguish. Meaning, if you have an issue with somebody else, or you have a principled stance that you take in contrast to somebody else, and you wanted to engage the other person about it, and he engages back with you, there's nachas ruach. There's something good in that. You can feel that there's something healthy that's happening here. I have my position, you have your position, we go at it, right? Whether we go out for drinks at the end of the day, I don't know. But at least you have a functioning world. But if the other person refuses to even engage with you, he won't respond to you, then there's tsar gadol. Firstly, it hurts. Come on. Why can't we finish this matter up? But the tsar gadol is much broader. It's a real worry that we're not functioning anymore as we need to. You and me and this world of ours isn't functioning if we can't debate openly and honestly about the things that matter. This is a worry that we should have about the type of 2021 America that we live in, where again there certainly is much debate that goes on, but otherwise we're canceling people. I know there's a lot to that, a lot built into that, but people whose ideas we find odious. So what do we do with those ideas? So again, it matters. It doesn't matter. Some ideas are beyond the pale, but there are a lot of ideas which are we deem to be wrong and need to be addressed. And those ideas we should be addressing with one another in a way which says, you matter, this issue matters, and because of that, let's talk with one another. Let's debate with one another, official debate, or just enable ourselves to be able to engage in important conversations. When we block people completely, then oy vavoy, then we're off saras. Then there's tsar gadol, then there is great anguish. We have one of our members, Michelle Brody, who's been involved in an organization called Braver Angels, which has tried to help train people, and communities, and leaders to figure out how to have difficult conversations, but to make sure the conversations still are. And we know in families it can be difficult. Politics or not politics, whatever, or the worldviews, right? And sometimes it's better for us not to talk about certain things. But in the end, when we need to talk about matters, if we're not willing to recognize that the other one's voice should be heard at all, then we're in trouble. My friends, this is a plea once more. I'm not pointing to anything specifically in this moment, but it's a plea. Always be ready to engage with the people that are in your world and in your orbit with whom you disagree. Do it with kavod, do it with respect, because you want to show that they still matter. And the issues matter enough that, that they need to be talked about openly and earnestly and with respect. If we do that, then there's still basis for nachat ruach. Let's give each other that nachat ruach, the one-on-one that we can do, and create that nachat ruach in our society as well. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom with a little bit of ease of nachat ruach.